Welcome, everybody, to The Lawyer Show. I'm your lawyer, Jeremy Rosenthal. The Lawyer Show is my weekly podcast, I suppose is probably the best way it fits, where we are lawyers and we talk about lawyer things and we talk about the way lawyers are, and we give the rest of the planet, all 10 of you or 15 of you or however many of you have nothing better to do with your day than to watch inside the fish tank that is the legal practice. And so my name is Jeremy Rosenthal. I'm a criminal lawyer. I do criminal defense, so I'm the good guy. And today we are going to be talking about a pretty fun, I think, topic as far as lawyers go, which is we have Laura Hayes, and she is a fashion lawyer. And so everybody who's watching kind of understands lawyers. We're all very, very special snowflakes, and we are all not only. And lawyers do a lot of preening. We do a lot of what's the word? We do a lot of self-aggrandizing, and we're all sort of egomaniacs in our own way. Who else would wear glasses like this, right? I mean, we're all kind of these look at me creatures, and so. They teach us in law school about, if you're in front of a jury, tone down the fashion. I've never had a problem with that. We've had many lawyers in our office come and go. I have continuously been rated as the worst dresser. And this is official. Anybody in county court at law number 3, Collin County, they actually did a poll at one point of every lawyer in our office. I took last, which I think was just kind of more. I think I think I'm better than at least one or two of the folks at my office at how I dress. But anyway, fashion is a near and dear topic to my heart, and so I want to introduce my co-counsel today, Laura Hayes. So Laura, go ahead and introduce yourself to Lawyer Show Nation.
Sure. Well, thanks for having me. Like I said, I'm Laura Hayes, and I am a partner at Fox Rothschild, and I practice family law and fashion law. So I'm board certified in family law, licensed in 4 states, Texas, Arizona, Florida, and Georgia. But I started branching out from family law to do fashion law. I've always had a passion for shoes and footwear and stilettos, and to spice up the boring black suit, I always have fun stilettos and that kind of thing.
And who doesn't have these things and
right.
care about these things?
Right, of course. I mean, you have to look good when you're in a courtroom, right? Anyway, so I've always wanted to have my own footwear company, but I branched out into fashion law. And my firm, I switched firms last year, and my firm actually has a fashion law section in our New York and West Palm offices. And I thought, well, I'm going to make the Dallas office have fashion, because Dallas is actually known for fashion. We have, Neiman Marcus is based here, JCPenney's based here. There's a lot of actual fashion companies that are in Dallas, and so it's a good market for fashion law, and I'm branching out and trying to make it a
trying to put your staple, if you will, and trying to branch out into that space.
Yes, absolutely. So, yes, I am, and it's actually because of COVID, I was able to really get into fashion law, and I'm getting my LLM in fashion law because I was able to. They're offering it virtually now. I've gone to fashion law CLEs along the way, but I was only doing family law, so I couldn't really do anything other than pursue my own interests. But because of COVID, I've been able to pursue this fashion law, and switching firms, I'm able to actually really build my practice in fashion.
So many of our viewers have what I would characterize as a morbid curiosity into lawyers and into the legal profession, and so they don't necessarily know what. Explain to everybody, what is an LLM?
Sure, it's basically a master's degree in law. So it's deep dive into, it's not board certified, like you have board certified in family law, so it's specializing in family law, but this is actually getting a master's degree in fashion law and really a deep dive into the area and all the different aspects of fashion law.
And how long is it? Is it a year, 2 years? How long does it take to get an LLM?
18 months to 2 years, depending on how many classes you take each semester.
And you went to SMU for law school.
I did. I graduated from SMU in 2003.
You didn't rack up enough student debt there,
right.
apparently, that you were like, yeah, give me some more.
Sure. That's exactly what it was. No.
Let's have a little more of this. Okay, so where's your LLM through?
It's through Fordham University,
Okay.
Which is actually the only law school right now that offers a fashion law LLM program. And so it's based in New York. So obviously there's a huge fashion law industry there. And so it's the LLM program kind of merges with the MSL, which is just a master's in fashion for non-lawyers. And so there's lawyers and there's law school students, and then there's just people who are wanting to get into the fashion industry. So it's a good mix of people.
I wouldn't think there would be a whole lot of folks that I wouldn't think that there's a whole lot of programs out there that focus in fashion law. So I would think it's a really finite group, and you're able to do that virtually.
Yes. It's
Okay.
all virtual, which is great. Otherwise, I wouldn't be able to. I mean, I can't obviously get a degree in New York while I'm practicing here and building my practice here. So it's been great that it's offered virtually now.
So and your classmates, do you get to see them online? And are these a bunch of fashionistas? Are these a bunch of aggressive fashion people?
Yes, actually. So it's very fascinating. There's 5 lawyers, I think there's 5 of us, that are actual practicing lawyers in the program right now, that are actually trying to branch out into fashion law. And then there's a lot of JD students, there's some international students, but there's people from all over. So it's interesting. Each of my classes, let's see, last night's class there was 22 of us in there, so it's a pretty good sized group.
Are people still gunners, or people
Yes.
like? Because
Yes.
okay.
Every nightmare that you still have of being called on and whether you did your homework, that still exists in an LLM program. But yes, there are definitely people who are gunners.
And you
for
did
sure.
this? Why?
I guess
I'm
I'm a
kidding.
glutton for punishment. Same reason I have 4 bar licenses. I don't know. No, I did it. It's really. I mean, I am a
Okay.
nerd excited about this. I know.
Okay, because I took the board. I'm board certified in criminal.
Right.
And what another lawyer show tradition is that we really kind of bag on Baylor Law School
Absolutely.
and
That's
Baylor
where my brother
alumni.
went, so we have to.
Oh, good.
We have to bag on Baylor.
For sure. Well, they did. He went to the law school?
He did.
Okay, so he must have taken practice court.
He did.
Does he talk about it nonstop?
He used to, not anymore, but he used
Okay.
to, absolutely.
Okay, because that's a big deal to Baylor people.
Well, yeah, you have to do that.
Okay, and we do have Baylor guests every now and again on the Lawyer Show. They can hit back, which I don't really like so much. But I remember when I took the board certification that it was crazy to me because it was just a bunch of aggressive Baylor people that had just aged 15 years. That was the only difference. And I looked around the room and they were all there with their Mac laptops. And they were just kind of, I'm like, man, you're the same aggressive whatever you were from 15 years ago. You've just kind of morphed into this even worse lawyer person.
Right, because we get crankier as we get older, so it's even worse when you're the gunner as you get older.
Wouldn't you? Yeah, don't you think?
I think so.
I mean, we all kind of find our own little niche in the legal profession. And yeah, I think probably in certain ways I'm more difficult. Whatever. Maybe yes, maybe no. I mean, I think we just take less crap.
Yeah, that's true.
Maybe. So, talking a little bit more about about how you kind of wanted to branch out into this, and certainly you're making a lot of efforts to kind of get into this space. Which are there a lot of other fashion lawyers in Dallas-Fort Worth? I know that your firm has sections but those are in other cities.
Correct. Yes. So my firm, yes, our fashion lawyers are in other cities. I don't know any other fashion lawyers in the Dallas market. I know some in LA and New York and the Miami, West Palm area, but I don't know any other. I know they exist, but I also don't think people who represent fashion companies don't necessarily call themselves fashion lawyers. For example, whoever, the attorneys that filed the bankruptcy on behalf of Neiman Marcus, they don't call themselves fashion lawyers, but they're technically doing something for the big fashion industry. I mean, Neiman Marcus is a huge deal in the fashion industry, obviously. So
That was one thing. So we talked the other day. And that was one thing that I kind of took away from it, was that the fashion law practice can really be, in many ways, compartmentalized in different areas.
Correct.
But it's the 40,000-foot view that kind of ties it all in. And just so everybody is kind of aware, for example, mergers and acquisitions.
Yes.
Right? There's a million of those lawyers in Dallas.
Right.
Who have zero fashion sense, or very much less than you.
Yes, of course.
Okay. There's a lot of mergers and acquisition lawyers. There's a lot of IP, intellectual property lawyers,
Right.
right?
Mm-hmm.
A lot of lawyers that may even they get into the space of merchandise is counterfeit.
Yes.
Okay.
That's a big deal right now.
But the convergence of all this, and also we'll talk a lot more about environmental sustainability, which you've let me know is a big topic. But it's when we kind of merge all these things under the same umbrella that we get fashion law.
Right. So anything related to companies in clothing, footwear, jewelry, cosmetics, that's really the large umbrella of fashion law itself. And then anything those businesses need, from formation to, venture capitalist fundraising, mergers and acquisitions, bankruptcies, even just retail contracts and even real estate contracts. If you're going to have a brick and mortar store, you've got to have that. So, and then there's obviously international tax laws related, depending where your supply chain starts. And so anything related to these businesses, but really focusing on those 4 categories of the industry.
What are your classes like? What kind of topics do your LLM classes cover?
Sure. So last semester I took a class in social justice and fashion law, which was fascinating. That covered human rights, sustainability, environmental issues. I also took a modeling law class, which was obviously very relevant because of the Me Too movement and everything else. This semester I'm doing fashion law and finance. We're talking mergers and acquisitions. Cosmetic regulations, which is fascinating, and then I'm actually also writing my thesis on footwear and sustainability. So,
talk a little bit about you just mentioned cosmetics,
cosmetic regulations,
and regulations. Man, I don't know a thing about it. Why don't you tell? And actually, let me do this first. You're watching JP, Kathy, and the Crew Network. You can watch JP, Kathy, and the Crew between 7:30 and 9 Monday, Wednesday, Friday. This is the Lawyer Show. We are on between 12 and 1 on Thursdays. My co-counsel today, I'm your lawyer, Jeremy Rosenthal. My co-counsel today is Laura Hayes. And the topic today is fashion law. So you are about to start talking about cosmetic regulations.
Yes.
Which, in my 20 years of practice, I just haven't managed to make it around to anything that involves that.
Right.
So why don't you go ahead and give folks an idea of what on God's green earth, pardon the pun,
hey,
that means.
Good. I'm very proud of you. That was good.
Thank you.
So cosmetic regulations. What products can you put in your cosmetics? Anything that goes on your body, from eyelashes to lotions to soaps is its own little category. But yes, so what products can you put in your or what ingredients can you put in your products? What can you not put in there? What happens if you get bacteria in your product as it ships, and who's liable for that? And sunscreens in and of itself is its own little category within cosmetic regulations. Like Hawaii just passed a law banning certain types of ingredients in sunscreens to protect the coral reefs and that kind of thing. So anything you put on your body, makeup, jewelry, makeup, nails, lotions, that kind of thing. So what those products can consist of, how the supply chain is regulated, and what happens if you have bad things in your products.
And is it the feds that regulate this primarily?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So the Federal Trade Commission, and then there's a Cosmetic Regulations Act that's very old and needs to be updated, and that's part of what we're talking about in our class, is how old these laws and regulations are and how much has changed and how they desperately need to be updated as we.
And other states weigh in too. Are there Texas-specific regulations?
Well, California is the biggest one. They actually just passed a law last year that's similar to the federal rules, but of course California has to do its own thing, and then that goes into effect. I mean, it was passed last year, and then certain companies have to comply with it by 2025, so they have a little bit of time. But it's just even narrowing in more on the federal regulations.
So let's say you have a client that's here in Dallas, right? You have a client that's here in Dallas, and they want to put something in the stream of commerce that's going to land in Hawaii, that's going to land in California, and so in those instances, you have to be able to kind of let your client know, hey, this is going to be a problem.
Right, because there's interstate regulations. There could be international laws at play depending on where the product's being made. Are they U.S. based? Okay, that's one thing, but even then, you've got the supply chain issue, and then if you're sending it to Hawaii, does it comply with Hawaii laws or California, or are the products legal to be put into your whatever
Mm-hmm.
you're making. So yeah, so it's a lot. So that's what makes it so fascinating. Is it's not just, oh look, I made a shoe, or I made this cool new makeup color. I mean, there's so much that goes into it. I mean, even just the colors themselves are regulated, and you have to get FDA approval. And is it just a cosmetic, or is it a drug? Because technically, sunscreens can be classified as both cosmetic and a drug. So there's lots of considerations to go into it. It's not just, oh look, I made a pretty new
Mm-hmm.
color. Or, I mean, it sounds, you think fashion gets a bad rap because it's fashion, right? But it's actually a very serious industry, and there's very serious complications. I mean, if you get bacteria in something that goes on your eyes, I mean, imagine the lawsuits and that kind of thing. But how can you control your supply chain and what goes into it? Especially now with COVID, you can't go to the factories necessarily and check in are they really putting the right products and the right ingredients into your product. And then if it gets shipped out with the wrong product and you don't know it, your company could have huge liability associated with that. So
Yeah, that sounds kind of almost in some ways intimidating. You sure you want to practice this? You sure this is?
it's fascinating. I mean,
Okay.
I could talk for days about all of this stuff because it's fascinating to me. Just how the products are made, how people think of this, how someone takes, hey, I want to start my own makeup line. I mean, obviously the celebrities can do it, but they have a team of experts doing it. But you also have, the individual who was bored during COVID and thought, hey, I'm going to make my own makeup line. And how do I go from my kitchen to this, product that I can ship nationwide? And
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's fascinating to me. But a lot of people are starting to do that. A lot of people did start side projects and want to actually turn it into a business. And so that part's kind of fun.
Anything with masks? I'm sure that's kind of a newer fashion.
Yes.
And you had some with you today.
Do you need me to show all my
Oh,
different
sure,
masks?
go for it.
My
This
fun
is
little fashionable
the
mask?
lawyer show, man. This is
I mean, you have to have the animal print mask.
okay,
Because it goes with, just about everything.
right?
Right? And then you have to have the Fashion Law Institute because that's my thing.
Uh-huh.
And it has to be pink because, that's my little, as you can see, my color. And then, of course, you have to have, the fun little one. So, this is my Lily Pulitzer, I wish I was on the beach mask.
Right.
So, helps me dream. And then, of course, my daughter has matching masks because she still thinks I'm cool and she wants to match with me. And so I'm going to take that as long as
So you guys match each other, which I'm sure matches what you're wearing.
Well, of course. And you have to think about these things. I know you think about this and you've thought about it a lot before you came in today.
I wear the little paper guy just because, yeah, it's less annoying on my ears and all that stuff. But are there a lot of what is a mom and pop who, I remember last April when the pandemic first started going a little nutty, a lot of mom and pops trying to manufacture their own masks and sell that type of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
What type of legal things should they be thinking about?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of them. So first of all, you see a lot of these people take, for example, old Louis Vuitton scarves or whatever and try to make a mask out of them. Yeah, that's really cute, but if you don't have permission from Louis Vuitton or Chanel or whatever, Gucci, whatever,
Mm-hmm.
you see all these, you could have IP related issues. I mean, I don't know how much they're going to go after, but that's an issue.
If you get good
can't
enough
just-
at it and start selling enough of them, then
Right, they might come after you for your profit. So
Mhm.
yeah, so there's obviously those, and then of course any kind of manufacturing issue with your masks. I mean, if you're sewing in them, they come apart, or if the elastic, somebody, I don't know, pokes an eye out with them. There's just regular, any kind of business issue you have with making any type of product would still apply in the fashion industry.
do you get into many tax issues?
I personally don't, because I'm not a tax. I mean, I still do that. I am not a tax lawyer.
Right.
Please get a tax,
Right.
separate advice. But yes, there are obviously tax issues involved,
Okay.
and potentially international tax issues, depending on how big your company gets.
Where everything's going, right?
Right.
And back to the makeup part and the cosmetics, the one area I would think that doesn't have a whole lot of these types of problems is Michigan. If you've ever met Michigan people, right? Not a lot of not a big priority there.
Right. I mean, if you're in the middle of winter and all you see is your eyes, you
Sure.
well, you still need eye makeup in that case, though.
Right? Yeah. I suppose maybe in the South and Texas it's a bigger deal, right?
It is.
Okay. That's just what I would naturally think. And you also mentioned modeling law.
Yes.
Okay. And in modeling law, and maybe this is a little more entertainment area-ish, but you tell me, any type of union issues, any type of issues related to collective bargaining, or I don't know if that would fall under SAG, but
right. So yeah, there is definitely a lot of overlap in the modeling world and the acting world, especially depending on what state you're in. I mean, California has its own, of course, rules and regulations. I mean, each state has its own rules and regulations, especially when you get to child models. I actually wrote my paper last semester on child models and whether they should be unionized, because whether the model industry should be unionized or not has been an ongoing debate for a very long time, and was highlighted even more with the Me Too movement. I mean, models, right, they're being objectified. There's a lot of, I mean, that's the point, right? You're walking down, everyone's staring at what you're wearing and who you are and what you look like. I mean, that's the industry itself, but there's a lot of bad things that come along with that. I mean, you have sexual abuse, you have, lots of issues. You have wage issues. There's a huge problem with wage theft in the model industry. I mean, that you sign this contract, especially the young child models. Oh, I'm going to be the next, famous model, and then, they end up either not getting paid or they get paid in goods. Well, that's great that you have a cute purse that you just spent 6 hours walking down a runway for a cute purse. Is it really worth it? And is that really fair wages? No, it's not. So there's a lot of issues within the model industry.
Yeah. So and this is an issue. I know some people extremely well that have been in the acting and modeling arenas and spaces, and what I don't think people understand is just what a fungible product you are when you're a model, because we want somebody who is going to be between this height and this height, right, who's this body type with this hair color. And you know what? If you want to get paid well, we've got 12 more just like you. And so so people kind of think, well, that's not a big deal to get paid a certain wage when you fit into this category. But what they don't see is the bigger picture, that it's really depressing the whole market. When you have such authority, right? When you're the modeling agency or the advertising agency or whatever you are, and you have such a heavy hand that you can say, well, this one, like you said, to your point, this one will work for a free purse.
Right.
Why do we need to pay you anything? And then on the model side, there's a lot of folks who I'm sure want the exposure, feel like they're building something, feel like they're building a portfolio, their name. So they're willing to put up with the underpayment, some of the abuse. I hate saying, but
it's true. I mean, there's a lot of sexual harassment that gets pushed under the rug in the industry itself. And I mean, obviously then there's the mental health aspect of it. If you need to be skinnier or prettier, or, I mean, that obviously creates long-term, especially if you get started as a young child model and you're told to always be skinnier, clearly that's going to lead to a lot of, eating disorders and maybe some other mental health issues that, if you want to be in the industry, you got to be a certain height and weight and everything else. And then, obviously that has ramifications for self-esteem later on too.
And we don't want these kids growing up and going to law school.
Well, I mean
that could be the worst. I mean, we have enough narcissists as it is, right?
True. Yes.
I mean, I was bragging earlier, and I don't know if I've mentioned this so far. My clothier, did I say that right?
You did.
Okay, is Joseph A. Bank.
Right.
Okay. I'm
very fancy of you.
I buy one, get 7 free.
Good bargain shopping.
And I do it whether I need it or not once every decade. Okay. So
So can we go shopping after this? I can help you out a little bit.
What are you trying to say?
If you're going to go back into the courtroom, we've got to make you stand out a little bit so you get best dressed instead of worst dressed. I mean, this is a goal in life. It should be. Right?
Now, okay, so it's funny that you mentioned that. Because there's a lawyer in Collin County who he's kind of an older gentleman now, but he is one of the most effective trial lawyers that I have ever met. It's not me. Okay, because I'm young, that's obvious. But this fella dresses like your English professor. Okay, and his coats they're not horrible. They're not like tattered, and they're not bad. But did he sleep in them last night? Maybe.
He was luckily preparing for trial to effectively advocate for his client.
Exactly.
I mean, obviously. And
he comes to court and he carries his stuff like he's an English professor, like a bunch of books, and the papers are hanging out. it's extremely disarming to a jury because, and those, if any of our watchers, any of you 5 or 10 of you have ever had jury duty, then jurors walk in and they instantly just hate you, right?
Right, because everyone hates lawyers.
Because everybody hates
Except
lawyers.
Except you, of course. Everyone loves you.
Yeah, maybe. My clients do. That's really important, but yeah. So when you get to jury duty and you see a lawyer wearing these things, right? And I mean, a lot of jurors I think just naturally kind of think, well, that guy's he's got to suck, really. I mean, he does. But then, like this other, the one I was telling you about, I mean, he's just so disarming that that people just sort of let him in, right. and then they find out, oh, he really is effective. Oh, he really has done a lot of work. Oh, and so he can really get inside to an area but you have to be yourself.
Right.
I mean, that's the number one rule, I think, of trial. And so if you're a pompous, preening jerk, I mean, the jury knows you're genuine or not.
Sure.
Right?
Absolutely.
Anyway, this is why my clothier is Joseph A. This may be a Brooks Brothers tie, one of my very rare ones. And it's funny too that and I'm just kind of going off on a tangent at this point. It's some of the lawyers in the courthouse. Some of them dress much better than others, and a few friends of mine. It's funny because I had I had a client one time who, for whatever reason, would buy me new ties, and we're talking Hermès.
Ooh, very fancy.
You didn't know that I knew that word.
Why didn't you not wear that today for today's show? I mean, I would have been super impressed.
Well, thank you. And so it's funny because every once in a while when I'll throw on the Hermès, I've got a few of them. It's funny because these other lawyers, the ones who know fashion and the ones who don't, they know instantly, and so they will stop me in the middle of the courthouse. They'll stop me right down there and they'll say, they'll just go, stop. And they will flip the tie around and they'll say, okay, that's what I thought. And then they look at my jacket and they're like, why are you mixing this crap?
Hey, celebrities do it all the time. They have the, not very expensive shirt with the really fancy shoes or something. I mean, it's good. So you actually were making a great fashion statement by having the one expensive piece and the reasonably priced one. You could be on Celebrities Are Just Like Us.
And Laura is the perfect guest for the Lawyer Show because she's figured out that complimenting me is kind of what this is all about, right? But yeah. That's it, and when they say to me, when they flip my tie around and they're like, dude, they're like, we're on to you. I'm like, the other 98% of folks around here,
no idea.
I got them tricked.
Yep. Yeah, I'm
very inexpensively.
See?
I might add.
But if you match the tie with your glasses, I assume you have different colored glasses, not just the green ones, or is it only green?
I have. Okay,
this could be this is your new job. You can create a line of lawyer glasses. And I'll help you. I will be your startup lawyer. Man,
that's great. I'm probably for the time being, gonna stick to my day job. I do have a pair of, in my, they're actually in my car. I have a pair of similar glasses that are, they're round and they're sunglasses, and they're tortoiseshell. Yes. And they're much darker, and I'm told by the other lawyers in my office that it makes me look like Ralphie from A Christmas Story, right?
I can picture it.
And so Heidi's here too. She's with our office. What's the line? Soap poisoning, or what brought you to this? From Ralphie from The Christmas Story.
Yeah. Wash your mouth out with soap.
Yes. Anyway,
I'm sorry.
It's okay. Heidi was she hangs on our every word here.
Right. Fascinating conversation about glasses and tortoiseshell.
Do we have any? We don't have any questions.
Not
yet. Not yet. Well, we're here for your questions. If you have a question about fashion law or fashion, they're all going to go to her in any event. You're watching JP, Kathy, and the Crew Network. This is the Lawyer Show. We're on between 12 and 1 on Thursdays. You can watch JP, Kathy, and the Crew between 7:30 and 9 on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. My co-counsel today is Laura Hayes with the firm of Fox Rothschild. She does family law and fashion law, and we've been talking so much about the fashion law, and so I wanted to hit some individual topics that we kind of brushed over with this. It sounds, and we've talked a lot, sort of, about sustainability, yes. Right? And is sustainability and pollution, would you characterize that as the number one hot topic issue in fashion today?
I don't know if I'd say it's the number one hot topic, but it's definitely a hot topic. I mean, you have a lot of big issues right now. You have a big issue with counterfeits. You have a big issue with sustainability. But yes, because climate change and making sustainable products is such a nationwide big issue, it is very much a big issue within the fashion industry. And it's actually one of the things that I'm very passionate about and excited to be learning more about. Because what I did, even as much as I love fashion, what I did not know until I took the Fashion Law Bootcamp in May, which started my process of getting my LLM, I did not.
So a lot of camouflage patterns.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
But yeah, no. So I did not realize what the fashion industry itself is so problematic and so polluting of our environment. Like, it is just, the entire supply chain is just, it's the most environmentally negative industry, and I don't think a lot of people realize that. I mean, I think some people do, but it's the second most polluting industry behind oil and gas, which is huge, and it has a big impact on our environment, from, I mean, the very beginning of a product to what do you do? I mean, think about how many clothes and shoes and things you throw away every year, or you donate to Goodwill. Well, they have a lot of stuff too, so then they send it over to these countries where it's needed, but even they're overpopulated with all the fast fashion. I mean, all these $10 t-shirts. First of all, I mean, you start with the waste from the water, how it pollutes the water, and how the products themselves are not biodegradable. So then what happens to them when they end up in the landfills? And then people don't recycle them. We just need more and more and more and more and more. And so obviously that's a big problem for the environment. So so sustainability is a huge topic, and a lot of needs to be a lot more updated regulations and laws, especially in the U.S. But I mean, a lot of the larger companies and even the smaller ones are starting to have goals to be more sustainable. But what does that mean? The problem is, sustainability means something different to everybody, and there's not really one definition. Kind of like when we started with diet foods. What is a diet food? Just because you put one healthy ingredient in, you can label it as diet. It's kind of the same thing. It's become a catchphrase, sustainability, but there's not really a uniform definition within the industry of what it means. But again, because there's such a negative impact to our environment within the industry as a whole, any progress towards sustainability is great, right? So, but you have a lot of companies. I've actually really been researching the athletic footwear industry and how much progress they have made towards sustainability. There's a company called On. They make running shoes. Well, they make more than shoes, but their shoes, they just came out with a plant-based shoe that's made from things like pineapples, and there's other companies that are making products out of mushrooms and corn and just more environmentally friendly products. I mean, Nike is a big company behind sustainable performance athletic wear and athletic footwear, but I'm fascinated by really sustainable footwear that's made of environmentally friendly products. But even those, they've made progress, but it's not a fully circular sustainable shoe. I mean, there's still parts of it that aren't plant-based or made of recyclable products, but they're trying. I mean, they're making huge steps in this, and we really have to start making our products more environmentally friendly. Because even actually there's a colleague of mine in our class writing about how much the oceans are affected by the fashion industry, and you wouldn't even think when you throw your shirts or your shoes or whatever in your washer and your dryer that ends up with these little tiny microfibers in the ocean that harms the animals in the ocean and everything. I mean, you've heard of how the food industry affects the ocean, plastics and whatever, but the fashion industry affecting the oceans and everything else it's fascinating to me, and we definitely need to start changing big time changes now, or we're going to have an even bigger problem in the future.
Are there issues with human rights?
Yes. So, a lot of the products are made in smaller countries, and there aren't any labor laws, and these people are forced to work in terrible conditions. They don't get paid very much. So yes, there's a huge human rights problem within the fashion industry. And so when people talk about sustainability, you automatically think of environmentally friendly products, but it's more than that. It's the workers, it's the conditions they're working in, it's the products themselves, it's the employees along the entire supply chain. I mean, sustainability is the whole industry and the whole supply chain, not just what your product is, and then what happens to your product when it gets into the consumer hands. And then that's back to the On running shoes. They just came out, I don't remember if it was last year, it was last year, but they have a new subscription-based program where they have their sustainable shoes, and then you pay a monthly fee, and they send them out, and then when you're ready for a new running shoe, you send it back to them, and you get your new shoe, but they'll recycle your other shoes. So they're programs like that are just, we need more of those, because really, it's a big problem. But you can get as many shoes as you want, one at a time, but you have to return them so they can make a new shoe or a new product out of your old used shoe instead of it ending up in the trash can or
not just throw it in the river.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. Try not to do that anyway, but.
Yeah. That's how a lot of folks define freedom, is the freedom to go and dump my motor oil in the creek. You're saying no.
Right. Generally not a good plan. Sure, it's an option. However, maybe we can reconsider that.
You can repurpose things. You can take a T-shirt and shine shoes with them.
Yes.
There you go. And another topic that you brushed on very briefly that we've kind of glossed over a couple times now is counterfeit.
Yes.
And counterfeiting.
Right.
Talk a little bit about that. And we are in Frisco, USA, the home or the headquarters, if you will, of the Dallas Cowboys, and I know that those guys, they take counterfeiting very seriously because their products get, I'll let you talk. You're the lawyer in this area.
Sure. So, counterfeiting is a big deal. So first of all, you have other countries where they're trying to make knockoff products, and you get on Amazon, you don't necessarily know if you're buying the actual product or if it's one of the knockoff products. It's hard to tell. So you've got counterfeiting issues that way. And then you have more companies like The RealReal, for example, that are reselling luxury brands. Like Chanel has just sued The RealReal actually for authentication issues and whether they can really say on The RealReal, is this an actual Chanel bag, and how do you authenticate it, and how do you know that it's not a counterfeit Chanel bag that's just a really good counterfeit. So there's a lot of industries. Now obviously, with Instagram and all of these social media things, the second you see it, as soon as the first lady wears something, you have factories across the country trying to make a cheaper version of it, and it sells out. Well, the person who actually made, or the company that actually made the product, whether it was the dress, shoe, jacket, whatever it is losing profits. And these smaller companies have a really hard time with it because they can't keep up fast enough, right, with the demand. If they do have they're suddenly Instagram famous, or somebody's on the news wearing their product, they can't keep up. But these counterfeit companies make their products so fast and so cheap that it puts the smaller companies out of business. So there's lots of issues there.
That's where some of the intellectual property
Correct.
Comes in, and the patent and the copyright and all that stuff. So how familiar do you need to be with all that?
You need to be pretty familiar. So in my firm, we have a lawyer in our West Palm office who does a lot of our trademark litigation and IP litigation in the fashion industry. And there's always issues there. Definitely, you got to keep track of it. But then you're limited in what you can and can't protect. Is Tiffany Blue protected? And Christian Louboutin went years of litigation over their red bottoms and whether you can protect that as an intellectual property. So there's tons of issues, and especially again now there's not a lot of protection in fashion in the IP laws. There's some, but there needs to be more. But any effort so far to actually make the laws more fashion friendly have not gotten anywhere. The director of our my fashion law program actually testified before Congress trying to make some modifications to intellectual property laws, trying to make them more fashion friendly, because whatever your shoe that's popular now is going to be, it's not going to be popular in 6 months or a year or whatever. And so it's such a fast-paced industry that the laws aren't necessarily protecting people as much as they should.
I see. And I guess that turns a lot too on how novel something is, right? We've had in the past IP lawyers talk about things about folks who go to their garage and try to create like a device that puts out more energy than it takes in, which I've since learned is against the law of physics, actually. But I know a lot of this turns on how new and how different it is. So you've got different. So are there a lot of folks out there who are tinkering with different fashion products, but kind of in the same way? I mean, it seems to me that one of the challenges for a company or for an individual is going to be, and maybe I'm showing why I do criminal law, not fashion law here. I mean, it seems to me there's only so many different ways to make a pair of pants.
Well, no. There's actually a lot of different ways to make a pair of pants.
Okay.
I mean, what products are you using? Are they skinny jeans? Are they not jeans? Are they what product are you using to make it? Are they male? Are they female? Are they gender neutral? I mean, there's actually a lot of things that go into these. I mean, you're laughing at me. And
I'm not. I'm laughing with you.
I'm
laughing. I'm laughing. I'm laughing with you. I'm laughing with. Yes. I'm laughing with you.
But I mean, look at now. How many different pairs of Lululemon pants can one person wear right in a row? Right. You need a different type of casual pant to wear when you're working remotely. And so, I mean, the casual stretchy pant industry has blossomed in the last year because everyone's trying to make the new, latest, most comfortable thing for all of us sitting at our houses where we want to be comfortable, but we also kind of halfway have to look professional when we're on Zoom or WebEx or whatever it is.
Okay.
So there's a lot of different pants. There's styles. There's products. I mean, there's.
I tried to pick the simplest. I tried to pick the simplest thing in my mind that I could. I suppose I could have said T-shirt, but I'm guessing that's.
Well, that's a whole different topic in and of itself. But yes, I mean, again, but same thing. What material are you using? Are you mass producing it? Or are you trying to make it, just unique and luxurious? And what are you doing? So there's lots of different things.
What are you tie-dyeing it with?
Exactly. I mean, yes.
Are these iron-on letters, or are they stitched on or sewed on? And then is it an 8-year-old that's doing it in another country that?
Right. Well, actually, so again, don't laugh, but I'm actually trying to learn the entire industry itself. So in October, I went to a 3-day shoemaking workshop in LA and learned how to make my own shoes because I never realized how difficult the process is and how much goes into like hand stitching and everything else. And then I was interested in the sustainability side of things, so I went to Mobile, Alabama, when did I go? For Thanksgiving, and did a day-long workshop at a factory there that's hand stitching. So, and they use sustainable and organic products, and then you can order a dress, for example, and you can make your own pattern, but then they give the kit and someone local there sews it together, or you can sew it yourself. I'm actually trying to sew my own. It may not be pretty, but I'm trying. But I mean, those are things that go into it. It's like, what products are we using, and is it hand sewn? Well, then if it's hand sewn, it's obviously much more expensive. And how do these companies make the sustainable products that are obviously much more expensive, and then stay in business too? So
you were talking earlier before we went on about your pineapple skin shoes.
Well, they use pineapple products.
Pineapple products.
Yes, so like they use parts of pineapples to.
Do you mind showing?
Oh, well, these aren't made of pineapples. This is just the ones I'm wearing. Actually, they just have the pineapple as their symbol. But the running shoes that I'm looking at are actually made from pineapple-based materials. So
there was never a need for the on the plains, right? The Native Americans, they went and they hunted the buffalo.
Right.
They could have just sort of planted mushrooms
and pineapples.
And pineapples.
Right, exactly.
Although pineapples are kind of on the tropical side.
True.
I wouldn't think that
they
necessarily in the Dakotas that would be a big.
Probably not.
I don't know these things. I mean, we need to there's probably an agriculture lawyer.
See, there's your next topic.
That we can, if you can find one, refer them to me, and we'll put them on the lawyer show because this is what we do. Has COVID industry-wide? How has COVID really affected? Sort of, are companies merging? Are they separating from each other? How has COVID impact the 40,000-foot view of the fashion industry from a lawyer standpoint?
Sure. So yes, it's obviously affected. I mean, there's obviously a lot of bankruptcies for the smaller companies, and there's a lot of mergers and acquisitions going on. Lots of them. I mean, I think almost daily I get one of my news articles about another company picking up smaller brands to make them. So there's going to be these big conglomerate fashion companies because there's constant mergers in it right now of lots of different brands, and people are trying to branch out to be able to provide all different types of things, not just, hey, I'm a t-shirt company. It's I want to sell shoes and t-shirts and sunglasses and all of these other things.
You had also mentioned that there's a really interesting lawsuit, and you mentioned it earlier, but we didn't talk about it too much. That's the Chanel versus the Real Real.
Yes.
Talk about that for a minute, and that's got some broader industry implications that you were kind of discussing the other day with me.
It does. So Chanel has sued the Real Real, which
and Chanel is
a very big luxury brand.
Okay, I knew that.
I mean, surely you've heard of.
I've heard of Chanel. I'm kidding. I know. Yes, of course I know who they are.
And the Real Real, which you may not know, is a web-based consignment. So if I no longer want to have my Chanel purse, for example, I can send it to the Real Real, and they will pay me a commission once they sell it. And so then, first of all, not everyone can afford a brand new Chanel purse, right? So you go to the Real Real and say, oh my gosh, this is the greatest Chanel purse, and you can buy it for, pennies on the dollar kind of thing. Well, not really. I mean, they're still expensive, but it's much cheaper than buying the brand new one. So Chanel has sued the Real Real, trying to figure out on the authentication process, because the Real Real says, yes, this is a Chanel product or a Burberry or Jimmy Choo or whatever it is. They say they authenticate it as whatever that brand is. Well, Chanel has said, well, how do you really know? How are you authenticating it? And the way you're authenticating it isn't proper. So that's part of it too. And then also, do you have the rights? Does the Real Real have the rights to resell the Chanel products? And so that's another issue.
Is consignment, are companies that do consignment is it the Real Real or Real Real?
The Real Real.
The Real Real. Are companies like the Real Real that do consignment, do they have a lot of power in the fashion industry?
Well, I don't know what you necessarily mean by power, but they're becoming more and more popular, and so there's a lot of issues coming up that weren't necessarily the case. I mean, before, I don't know, not everybody, how you might sell your purse, your luxury handbag to a friend or a neighbor, or give it to your, daughter for her 16th birthday or something. But now there's a lot of these consignment companies that are coming up, and so it's becoming much more of an issue of how are they regulated, how are they authenticating their products, and what do you do if, you do order a Burberry purse from a consignment store, and then you get it and you realize it's not really Burberry. What do you do? So. Okay,
and I guess kind of what I was getting at too, when I say power, for example, I also know extremely well a person who's a big fan of Fortnite.
Okay.
May or may not be, I'm not allowed to talk. I've been told very explicitly, don't you talk about, me on your thing.
Got it.
But I happen to know a really good fan of Fortnite, and Fortnite and Apple are in a really nasty lawsuit. And you wouldn't think that that anybody can stand toe to toe with Apple in litigation, right? You would think that it would be hard or difficult. Yet Fortnite has got a lot of assets. They've got a lot of punch. They've got a lot of power, I suppose, in the industry. And I would wonder if a company like the Real Real can stand up to a Chanel.
They can.
Okay.
I mean, I don't know what the lawsuit's going to be, but there's motions to dismiss. I mean, there's lots of. What happens with that lawsuit is going to have a big impact on the industry. In fact, one of my colleagues in my program is writing her whole thesis based off of that particular lawsuit. So it's going to be the ramifications of it, depending on which way it goes, could have a huge effect on the fashion industry itself.
What are some antitrust issues that can happen in the fashion space?
Well, I mean, there's a couple of different things. You've got, again, the mergers and acquisitions. If these larger companies start pulling up all across the industry, you're going to have a Amazon of the fashion world before too long, and so then you've got issues there.
Just kind of sort of and I wrote don't ask me why, I wrote a paper in law school on antitrust. It was actually
Okay.
really, really fascinating, but I was like, I would rather, I'd rather go into an area of law that focuses on gunshot wounds and,
Yeah, because the antitrust with Apple and Google and Amazon right now you'd have no work to do.
right? Yeah. So and so there's two forms of antitrust. I believe that's right. There is the what everybody thinks about it with the monopolies, right? And those are probably becoming bigger and bigger issues that I think everybody's seeing with Amazon, with Apple. With Google, with the tech giants, right? And we're finding out that they can regulate really whatever they want. It used to be that the government would tell them, companies like them, what to do. Now we're finding out it's kind of almost the other way around.
Right.
There's that issue, and I guess you can even extend it to day trading with a lot of the stock issues and some of the big companies. But the other one is price fixing. Which is what the airlines have always been accused of. In fact, professional sports have been accused a lot of that, which is, oh, well, we're not going to pay this player, wink, wink, nod, nod. No, nobody pay this guy. He's a jerk.
Right.
But you're saying kind of the motion of the ocean when it comes to who are the really, really big hitters, the major companies in the fashion world that could threaten to be antitrust players?
Well, that's a tough question. The biggest players are obviously, the big luxury brands. You've got the LVMH, which is a conglomerate of a lot of different fashion brands. And you've got Gucci Group, which owns more than just Gucci.
Okay.
Do you know Gucci?
Yes.
You didn't necessarily know Chanel, so I'm just making sure. Do you know what LVMH is?
No, that one. No, you got me on that one.
Okay, so it's like Louis Vuitton. Have you heard of Louis Vuitton?
I know, yes.
Okay, so that's one of their brands.
Okay.
So that's the big one.
I'm picking up what you're putting down. I get it. I
Right.
get you. Okay. You're watching The Lawyer Show. We're on between 12 and 1 on Thursdays. This is JP, Kathy, and the Crew Network. You can watch JP, Kathy, and the Crew between 7:30 and 9 on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. I am your lawyer today, Jeremy Rosenthal. My co-counsel is attorney Laura Hayes. She does fashion law, and as we're going to talk about, because we haven't talked about it so far, we're going to talk a little bit about your family law practice. She is licensed in 4 states. You talked about that at the very beginning, but I want to kind of get back to what makes you a glutton for punishment, because you told me you took all 4 bar exams?
I did. And then I'm board certified in family law as well.
Okay.
By Texas.
How hard does that all suck?
it wasn't fun.
Okay. Which is the hardest bar?
Texas, but for a lot of reasons. One, it was more days than the others, so it was 3 days back when I took it. I don't know if it still is, to be honest. But also it was the first one, so,
Yeah.
scary, and I can't do it, and, lots of drama, which I'm sure.
The head games and the, yeah.
So Texas was definitely the hardest, and then, so part of the reason I have 4 is because I was formerly married to someone in the military, so every time we moved, I'd take a new bar, and the way my luck works, for example, when we moved to Georgia, I was 1 year shy of being able to have reciprocity, but I didn't want to sit around and not work for a year because I wouldn't know what to do with myself, and so I took the bar just instead of waiting a year because I'm impatient, so. Yeah, and then we were right next to the Florida border, and I love Florida, and so I just went
Let's
and
do
said,
it.
why not? We're 20 miles from the border, so why not take Georgia and Florida? So
That's
But
right.
actually now it's fun because I get to practice across all 4 states.
Sure.
And there's a lot of, I just did a big divorce in Georgia last year because one of the spouses had moved here, and the other spouse and kids had remained in Georgia, but he wanted a local lawyer, so I was able to help him both ways, right? And then I have constantly have jurisdictional battles and custody issues, whether it's because someone moved and someone's trying to get the other parent trying to get the mom, dad, whatever, and child back to Texas, or they want to move. What are the relocation issues? So there's so it actually comes into play a lot more, and I do get lots of calls because I can practice in all 4 jurisdictions, and I have practiced family law in all 4 jurisdictions. So it's not just, oh, great, I got licensed. I actually practiced family law in all of those all places. So that helps because I can, there's still a, local judge issue,
Sure.
but just, but that's part of what I love about my firm too, is we have local offices too, so I can help the clients, and then if I need, hands on or feet on the ground, which doesn't matter as much now because a lot of it's on Zoom, but they don't have to pay me to fly there.
Pineapple skin boots on the ground.
Well, exactly. Yes. See,
That's
like
it.
Yes.
Yeah. Pineapple skin boots on the ground. So, because too, you can help folks who, for example, you can tell them, well, in Georgia, here's what the law says, and in Texas, the law is a little different in this regard, or they're the same, or they're different.
Right.
You can give that type of advice.
Yes.
Also, and so everybody understands, lawyer licensing is a bit of a weird thing, because what happens is there are a handful of states, the bigger states, which get a little possessive of lawyers, and I mean, let's be realistic. Let's be snobs about this for a minute, okay? She mentioned what's called reciprocity, which is where a lawyer, basically, if you're licensed in one state, other states will allow you in. There are, and I forget how many there are now, and I'm sure it's a bit of a changing thing, but I want to say there's about 6 or 7 states that just don't do reciprocity, and Texas is one of them.
Yeah, I haven't looked at the rules in so long. The last bar I took was 2012, and that was in Florida. But I know Arizona for a long time, I think it's changed now, but for a long time, Arizona didn't have any reciprocity either.
Okay.
And California has its own little...
Well, yeah, and so the theory is, like, in Texas, basically what, what our state says is, okay, you went to law school in North Dakota, and that's cute and all, but we're not going to let you come to Texas because we're not going to let you come here unless you pass our bar.
Exactly.
And so, and North Dakota replies by saying, well, by saying, well, screw you, Texas. We're not going to let your people in here either.
Right.
So Texas lawyers were kind of stuck that way. Although I think a lot of states, if you practice long enough, they'll let you in.
Right.
They'll waive reciprocity. So if you're practicing in Texas for 5 years, 7 years, 10 years, and you go to any other state in the union, you go to Iowa, and it's like, okay, well, we need the fees and the money. And to be fair, some states really need lawyers. Some states really need good lawyers, because I don't know how many, and not to pick on, I don't know how many really top flight lawyers are running around Idaho. I mean, or,
exactly.
So just a little Texas snobbery here, but it is hard. But you did all the push-ups and all the sit-ups and all the, I mean, you went and took all the bars in each state.
I did.
And another interesting thing that you kind of mentioned to me that I really picked up on when we were talking the other day is, with the family law stuff, you said you're tired of the nuclear war, everything being a nuclear war.
Yeah, so I have to give credit to one of my favorite mediators, Kevin Fuller, who actually used that term first, and I loved it so much because it's true. Yeah, you're fighting nuclear wars. I was talking about this before this started. I spent an hour this morning arguing over photographs and videos that you wouldn't think that'd be hard to just make copies of and give out to, but these things, people fight over. I mean, it's great when you have a custody case and you get a child out of a bad situation into a good situation, or you solve a really complex property division case and everybody walks away relatively happy and they're going to be... So those kinds of things are good, but then a lot of times you get into these very petty arguments and your people are paying thousands and thousands of dollars over very petty things, and it gets to you after a while. So, I mean, I really enjoy really helping people and helping, my clients get from a bad place when they're coming to me, emotional about a divorce, and then you can see as it progresses that they've done, managed to get through the emotions and they're creating a new life, and it's great. So those kinds of things I enjoy, but it's the petty arguments all the time that that's why I sort of branched out into family law too. I mean, into fashion law, so that I can, do a little bit of both, because fashion law is much more exciting and passionate than fighting the nuclear wars.
Right. Yeah. And these cases are about control for the litigants.
Right.
It's not so much about, I want the lawnmower.
Right.
It's about
the lawnmower and I want it.
It's about, you're not the boss of me.
Right.
Or I'm the boss of you. Right. And what I'm going to say around here is going to go. That's a lot more about what you're fighting over in certain instances.
Right. I mean, there are some where a lot of family law is very, you have the domestic violence issues. I mean, they're very important things, but it does get very petty at times too.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, that's where we make fun of ourselves, family lawyers, that we're kind of counselors by default. We should all be honorary mental health professionals, because we're dealing with a lot of the emotional side of things and learning how to guide our clients through that and say, okay, I understand that you want this, but do you really want it, or do you only want it because your spouse wants it? And then what is so you have to kind of break it down and decide what's really behind what they're arguing about, so you can find out if it's really something worth fighting for your client. So that part of it's kind of fun, is really finding out, like, okay, what is your ultimate goal and how do I get you there?
Yeah.
I mean, it might be worth fighting over something that seems relatively petty, and that might be what's really important in that estate, but sometimes it's not.
But it is important in a divorce to show the other side, look, this is an ass kicking here. I think I can say that on JP and the Kathy and the Crew Network, okay?
Yeah.
And I'm winning and you're losing.
Right.
Because that's what good lawyers do.
Well, of course.
We take the other side and we do it like that. And even if it's about fashion, we're gonna you know what? This is our stadium. This is our house. We're gonna do it our way. I hear the music.
Does that mean we're
Are
done
you
now?
guys what? We're done?
They didn't like your analogy there.
Oh, that's okay. Well, you've been watching The Lawyer Show. Thank you very much for tuning in, everybody. I hope you learned something, and if you didn't, I'm sorry. Thank you.